participant numbers seem to have leveled off. We really appreciate so many of you joining us this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for our May meeting of the BSA's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network meeting. We're thrilled today to be co-presenting today's topic on what does a just label mean for a firm, together with the Built Environment Plus and the New England chapter of the Living Future Collaborative. So for today's agenda, what we'll be doing is hearing a few basics on what the just label is, and then we'll have a conversation of some panelists who have pursued the just label for their own organizations. We'll then break down into breakout rooms where we'll have a discussion that will be moderated by those panelists, as well as a few other representatives who have pursued the just label within their own organizations. And then we'll return all back together and talk about some of the upcoming events that will be and training opportunities from both the BSA as well as the Built Environment Plus. So today's learning objective today is an AIA CEU activity. There is also an opportunity for Living Future education credits, although those do need to be self-reported. The AIA credits, in terms of receiving credit, the information on that, as well as the Living Future education credits, is in the chat if you could migrate over there. But the learning objectives for today for the AIA credits are to speak about the just transparency label structure and how it works, to articulate what the just label is measuring, to take to your organization the names of local firms who have achieved the just label and example learning experiences, and to examine what the just label process could mean for your firm. So as I mentioned, this program is being put on by the BSA's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Network. I'm Rachel Zemberry, one of the co-chairs of the network. Tony Ransom and Dan Riccadelli are with us here today, and you'll hear from each later on. We are happy to be able to bring to you programming, resources, and forums as a discussion as part of the EDI network. So as typical, when we begin our meetings, we just like to refer to our social norms that we adhere to within this network, to always assume good intentions, be aware of your impact regardless of intentions. Most importantly, listen to learn, not to be reinforced, and don't wait for perfection. Ask any questions you have and jump right into the discussion. So with that, I am going to hand this over to Diane Tufts.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm sure you're all aware, you've probably been paying attention to some of the things that the EDI knowledge community has been doing with the BSA. So most recently, they've been taking folks through one chapter at a time, the AIA's Guide to Equitable Practices. So we felt like this was a really great transition to help folks have another idea of how to evaluate your organization and start to understand maybe where are you doing really well, where are some areas in which you can take those equitable practice guides and start to apply them to the work that you're doing and seek out some continual improvement and growth as you continue to go on. So today we are here to talk about a framework that can help you do that, the JUST label. So we're going to take a look at the JUST 2.0 label and framework basics. So if you don't mind going to the next slide.
Sure, and I'm so sorry to interrupt, Diane, but I just wanted to also mention for everybody, because I neglected to earlier, that this session is being recorded with the exception of the breakout rooms. So just please be sure to understand that if you do screen share your computer or your video, that will be recorded.
Thank you so much for that reminder.
Thank you.
So my name is Diane Tufts. Along with my facilitator today, Jim Newman. We are volunteers that help run and organize content for platforms from ILFI, the International Living Future Institute. JUST is one of those platforms, and so that's what we're here to talk about today. So there's ways to get connected with us. We are in partnership with Built Environment Plus, a BE Plus, and just looking to build community and have deeper conversations on what sustainability looks like across the board. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. To start digging in, what is a JUST label? So JUST is a platform for organizations to be transparent about their policies and a tool to understand one's own social justice practices. The act of sharing ideas and approaches demonstrates leadership in social justice issues, and through friendly competitions creates a culture of permission within the industry. And as a social disclosure tool, the label manages, which is managed by ILFI, is not currently third-party verified. So next, we're going to go ahead and take a look at an example label and understand the label structure, looking to get a little bit of a foundational information so that we can all, jump into the next part of the conversation with a little base knowledge. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Here we have an example label. I'm going to kind of take you through the breakdown of what we see here and what we can gain from looking at a label. So you have the company details. You have 6 JUST categories. So kind of the areas of impact and how they organize those. There are 22 JUST indicators, which are the different specific things that we're taking a look at. The rating for each of those indicators, a label ID in order to uniquely identify each organization and what they're working on, as well as an expiration date. So when we kind of take a deeper look into the 4 boxes that are used for rating, those are to be understood as, 1 box is transparent leading up to, two, let's skip things. 2 is good, 3 is better practices, and 4 is really understood to be exceptional practices. So some like really reaching above and beyond sort of the industry standard. The system is not based on a performance paradigm. You can simply be transparent in any or all of the categories to earn a label. The label is a snapshot in time and valid for 24 months. So it does require regular upkeep to maintain status as a JUST organization and can be updated prior to that 2-year minimum requirement. So on the next slide, we're going to take a look at sort of some of the aims that come with becoming a JUST organization. So the real basic goal of it and intention is to start a conversation, is to get people to start digging in, taking a closer look, being critical, and just dialogue with each other and ask like, what are we doing? How, what does that look like? What does it mean? Where are there possible gaps? And so here we have outlined ILFI's aims. It is to help organizations methodically evaluate and improve their HR policies, programs, and practices, to make life better for all workers, and to create a common framework to talk about and measure equity within a workplace. So then what does it actually look like to become a JUST organization? How do you get there? So on the next slide, we kind of take a look at some basic steps, trying to break it down for you a little bit today so that we can get into a conversation of how has it looked, how has this come to fruition with 3 different organizations. So the first step is really to take stock, to create an inventory of your policies as they relate to the 6 social justice categories. Those categories are diversity and inclusion, equity, employee health, employee benefits, stewardship, and purchasing and supply chain. So these indicators serve as the foundation for an EDI forward organization by understanding who makes up the organization, how the staff is compensated comprehensively, creating a culture of engagement inwardly, as well as extending that engagement to the local community, and being aware of the purchasing power inherent in all organizations. So once you've created a policy and inventoried those policies, taken stock, then you want to proceed with identifying gaps. So a good example for doing so is Integral Group's outcome-based approach. There is, and we'll have some of these resources at the end. And then also as a company, conduct roundtables and town halls and surveys to help establish roadmaps to meeting up with your long-term and short-term goals. And to note that is not something that should exclusively happen within management. It's really, there's intention with engagement and inclusion within the framework, and really kind of looks to engage staff at all levels to gather feedback, evaluate internal constraints, and develop a plan towards filling the gaps that you've identified in the previous 2 steps. So these steps alone will not create a transformative workplace, but they will serve as a catalyst for progress. So you can improve practices and policies with every intention as you continue to experiment, evolve, and pursue new strategies for your organization. So the next slide does kind of talk about some of the resources that are available. So I'm going to post these, some of these links that are in the slide to the chat. So, you know, we gather to facilitate and start a conversation today kind of around this last resource of, you know, through community engagement and kind of sharing amongst each other. So next up, we will have an opportunity to hear about some industry examples to share and inquire. And with that, I'm going to hand things off to Jim Newman, who will introduce our panelists and get us going.
Fantastic. Here, I'll show my face. Hey. Great, good morning. So I'm Jim Newman, one of the co-facilitators of the New England Living Futures Collaborative. We use the term collaborative because we try and be collaborative. If you could, Diane, why don't you put the slide back up with a list of folks? And we have, there's a really great little group of folks here that cover a lot of different sort of scales of firms, starting with Harmony Larson from Dream Collaborative. Harmony plays a number of roles at Dream Collaborative, including sort of communications, but also sort of managing the just process for Dream Collaborative. Dream Collaborative is a minority-owned firm in Boston. I'm sure many of you know it and have worked with Dream Collaborative. Then we have Laura Homich, who Diane works with at PCA, Provost Chilinsky. Laura has also managed the just process for PCA with help from a number of people, and sort of plays a little bit more of a larger role in design in PCA. And finally, Gary Gongora from Payette, who also has, with the help of Andrea Love at Payette, has managed the just process. And obviously, we're talking about sort of 3 scales of firms here. You know, Dream Collaborative is sort of a smallish, medium-sized firm. PCA is a somewhat larger, sort of regional firm, and Payette is a relatively large, sort of national firm with, you know, sort of a large portfolio. And each of our panelists have a very different perspective on what the process brought to them, what they brought to the process, and how each of the organizations has taken it forward and used what is a generally kind of interesting and potentially transformative process for their own purposes and with different perspectives. So I'm going to pass it back to Diane. Go ahead.
One thing really quickly. So we do have Julie with us today as well.
Oh, we do? Okay,
Yes.
Great. And the 4th person is Julie Janitsky from Bureau Happold in the Boston office. So Julie's Bureau Happold is a multi-office, multi-thousand-person international firm that an engineering firm that so brings a somewhat different perspective from the design firms, which was one of the reasons we were excited about Julie being in the team. And Julie, a number of folks have spearheaded this process. Julie has been key to it for Bureau Happold. The just process is really aimed at the US-based operations, and has taken on a sort of a life of its own within the larger scale international process. So now I'll hand it back to you, Diane, to move on to the next item.
Fantastic. So we're going to go ahead and pin our panelists and have a little bit of a brief panel conversation. So as Dan is helping us out with that, and if you don't mind pinning Jim and I, even though, or you could leave Jim off if he doesn't want to be on camera. We are going to, just a little reminder. So what we are doing at this time is having a little bit of a panel conversation to hear about some real-time examples from some organizations locally. Feel free to use the chat to engage. We will not be addressing questions directly in the chat, but we'll be kind of pulling some ideas that come from the chat and inserting those into the conversation. And then there will be an opportunity at the end of the panel conversation to for some Q&A in the breakout room. So each of the breakout rooms will be hosted by one of the organizations or Jim and myself. And that way folks can have a smaller group to address some questions that might be a bit more specifically on your mind. All right. So I'm not seeing folks pinned. I'm still working on that, Dan.
Oh, Diane, I have them pinned. Is everyone able to see them in speaker view on the top right?
Okay, that works for me.
You get them all?
It's still showing just like the whole ribbon, but we'll proceed.
Okay.
All right. All right, so starting off today, I would love to hear from Harmony a little bit on what your role was in your organization and kind of how Just came into your office.
I just want to say thank you for inviting me. I'm a huge fan of Just. After going through the process, I think it's just super valuable. So I'm glad to be part of sharing it forward with others, and I hope it motivates some people to go through the process. Just found us, actually. I didn't ask, but I can guess that they identified some shared values and some mission alignment with Dream. They reached out to us back in 2018, and it took us probably close to a year before we really got going on actively pulling together our policies. But it just struck a chord with me. It felt like a good thing to do for a number of reasons. There was some, we happened to be in a period of growth. We're still in, but a pretty significant period relative to our size. And, with that came some need for policies that we didn't have, and some challenges from just growing and being a collective of a very diverse group of people. So eventually we just got it done. I led the process. I collaborated with other people on the leadership team. I got a lot of support from our operations manager to collect and verify data that we didn't really have easy access to prior.
Thank you so much. So we're going to run through the organization by size right now and be able to hear a little bit of just how Just became part of their organization. So Laura, if you don't mind speaking a little bit to PCA and your experience there.
Sure, I echo the same sentiment. I'm really happy to be here to talk about Just. It is an interesting process to go through, and it's definitely a process and an evolution. And we benefited from having Diane, who is involved inherently, and then I wasn't a principal at the time when we started. It takes a little bit of time to get through everything and understand it and where you're shifting, and so a group of us kind of got together. There was a handful of people, and I think instinctually we thought that we would do pretty well, but it would be worthwhile just taking a look and getting to a place of self-awareness through it. So we started looking at the 1.0 version originally, and through the time frame, the 2.0 came on, and so that one seemed to be a better process for our firm. We thought we were going to get more out of the process going through the 2.0 version, just because things had shifted and it seemed to align with, you know, our firm and what we had going on. And so really saw it as a good tool for exploration and awareness and understanding. And you know, little by little, we had to create policies, we had to do a handful of things. And that was sort of when I did transition into being a principal. So that conduit became a little more direct, and you know, working with our HR group and this other smaller group of folks who just really were dedicated to pushing this along and keeping it moving forward. So it was semi-grassroots within the firm, but you know, the conduit to upper leadership is sort of an important piece to it as well.
Thank you so much. Nairi, if you don't mind speaking to your experience at Payette.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. At Payette, it's what we're categorizing here is a large firm. So it's spearheaded primarily by myself, Andrea Love, who's the director of sustainability and one of our principals, and Chris Lind, who's our head of HR. So the three of us kind of broached the whole process. Similar to Harmony, it took us about a year. And we also started with the 1.0 and then ended up shifting to the 2.0. And it came to us essentially through Andrea. I believe she was in tune with some of the other labels and programs of ILFI. And we had a lot of initiatives within the firm through smaller task forces. But not to say that it was, I don't want to say ad hoc, but I believe it was more like we brainstorm, identify, and attack certain things within the office to promote the EDI agenda, but just really provided a great framework to really sweep the whole office and the whole company and just really understand that if this is important to us, what different items need to be in our radar that might not even be within our radar. So it was appealing in that sense of just really taking a holistic view and looking under the hood and making sure we're targeting everything we can.
Thank you so much. And Julie, very much looking forward to hearing about your role and experience with your multi-office firm, Bureau Happold.
Sure, thanks. And also thanks very much for pulling this together and for having me along. The Bureau Happold process started in 2015 when my colleague Heidi Creighton, who was deeply engaged with Living Building Challenge at that point, raised the question with a small group of us leading in the US sustainability practice for all of our offices in the US. She, at that time, our managing director for the US practice, was also in the LA office where Heidi sits. So she was able to make the direct ask to the managing director to say this is something that's very aligned to our core values and our mission. It's also a smart business proposition for us to make as we're continuing to work on Living Building Challenge projects, and we can offer this as part of the methodology for pursuing that certification. So it took us about 6 months to go from the initial ask internally to receiving the certification. About 1 month of that was the intense data collection with our HR team and coordinating with our colleague Joyce, who leads the operations group at Bureau Happold as well. So we had the 2016 and 2018 certifications under the version 1.0 program and the 2020 certification under the current 2.0 program, going from a total of companies in 2016 of 38 that had the just label to 2020 of 116, and hopefully that number is even larger today. Diane, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No worries.
It was really great to speak with the organizations, kind of hear some of the diversity and how the conversation even got started, whether it was from the bottom up, top down, somewhere in the middle. It was kind of interesting to hear that it does have the ability to take hold regardless of who it comes from, like who brings the original idea to the organization. So I definitely heard some pretty cool things from different individuals. And Julie, I might have you, since you're just speaking, speak a little bit more to, how did the Just organization, going through the process and the framework, help your organization understand itself better and when applying sort of the gradient?
Sure. BH has actually put together some really cool graphics. I will see if there's a link to them somewhere that I can give everyone. But being able to actually take the 2016, 2018, 2020 metrics and compare them to start to see trends has been exceptionally interesting and valuable. When we did the first version of the certification in 2016, there was a significant, not reaction, but initiative internally to look at salary adjustments across the US region because of the work that we had done to pull all the data together. Sort of more traditionally, 5 or 7 years ago, BH would assess salary reviews, bonuses, performance on more of an office by office basis. And in the US, we have offices in New York, Boston, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Detroit, LA, and San Francisco. And out of the work around the Just label, there's been a significant shift in how we're looking at performance, pay raises, benefits, et cetera, to be much more consistent across the US region. And use that data to continue to have conversations about equity. So when there's a group of line managers or principals getting together now to talk about bonuses and pay raises, part of the matrix that we're looking at very specifically includes a gender calculation to show in black and white in real time what the impact is to the gender pay balance as we're having those conversations. So I think it's started a really great conversation internally. It's had impacts on pay equity. It's had impacts on better policies. It's had impacts on staff retention and attraction. But most of all, it's had impact on our own awareness and education and a growing desire to use this as a launching point to do even more.
I do think that that's something that I've heard as a pattern is that, as organizations, we kind of think that things are happening one way, but unless we're really kind of digging in and paying attention to the details, especially when it comes to gender pay balance or, just like living wage pay equity, there's a number of things that it's kind of, there's some resources inherent in the manual that really kind of help us just understand some ways to have some better baselines, to be able to have a better sense of how we're doing to make sure that individuals are able to, earn a living wage.
Yeah.
Just some ideas on how that can be implemented.
Can I add one more thing, Diane?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the most important things that's come out of this effort, in addition to having this data, is questioning the data itself and understanding where it does need to be nuanced for what we're trying to do with our company. So even at 250 people, the trends are not necessarily statistically significant to be able to action off of them. So the devil is in the detail, which is a phrase you used when we chatted the other day. There's a huge amount of nuance. And some of those nuances are even built into the way that the ILFI is administering this program. So the question of ethnic and racial diversity is relevant to state census data rather than city information. And that's something that we've started to look at much more closely because the state data skews the comparison between an urban city location and what's happening over the state. And it, from our perspective, feels like cheating to look at the state data instead of the city data. So we've started to look at the city data, and staff have started to get more involved in initiatives in the city with ACE mentorship and other types of programs like that, just sort of recognizing that there's a really big gap in our company and in our industry.
That's a great comment, Julie, about sort of the nuance. And I'm interested in Harmony, you coming at it sort of from a very different perspective of a much smaller organization, really statistically valid data. It's like, and sort of the question of So how does the nuance, work for Dream Collaborative, and what is that? Where does that get you? Does it change how you think about the firm, or does it change how you think about the label itself?
Well, I'll just say a big part of the motivation for going through the process for filing policies and doing the work is because as a minority-owned firm, the last thing you want to be is just a minority-owned firm. So for us, it was about putting a lot more meat on the bones of diversity. Looking, we're 100% minority-owned. We've always had, it's always been an important part of Dream to continue to be diverse. But what does that really mean? It's not just a collection of different people that you put together and magically you get amazing results. It's we had to push a little deeper than that, a lot deeper than that actually, and we're still digging, and I think we always will be. In order to really tap that value that we firmly believe in, that added value that each and every one of us realizes by working together, and the value to our clients, we need to honor and give platform to the different experiences that people have, what it means to walk in, different set of shoes for your whole life, and what you bring to the office, what you bring to your work as a result. And so we had to really grapple with what it means to be inclusive. And that has been a journey, and it's been a good one. I think that Julie, you made a great point about, someone did, I'm sorry if I'm forgetting, that it's not, the Just Label is not an end. It's a satisfying way to track your progress. And so as soon as we had our label, I said, yay. And then I said, I can't wait to do the next one, because I know it can be better. So.
That's a fantastic comment. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I would add, I can't imagine, a firm or any group really trying to create their own way, a method of how to analyze their culture or their inclusivity, or whatever the things they think they might want to work on or make adjustments to. And what Just does and did, I think, for our office was really create just like it's called the framework for a reason. It gives you a place to start, because to create it out of nowhere would be really hard. And they've spent quite a lot of time collecting all the indicators and putting a lot of information in there to help people and people within companies just really look at themselves and see where those places are to grow. And so I appreciate the platform in that way. And I don't know how else we would be able, we moved into a whole new sort of world with Zoom and all everything that was just happening throughout the world for the last year and a half. And it just gave us a place where we knew a handful of things, at least from a work standpoint, about our office, and how to navigate better and how to work through the issues. And it opened a lot of conversations I think we would have never had throughout the year had we not gone through this exercise of looking at our equity, our diversity, the level of inclusion that we wanted to have within the firm, the level of transparency we thought we had versus what we actually had. That was really eye-opening. There's a survey that is part of the 2.0 that we took the results of that survey and used it for the last number of years to really take a look at how we can improve particular places that we scored poorly. And we were shocked where we scored poorly. We were surprised that, we weren't as inclusive as we thought we were. And it's like, oh, okay, that's an eye-opening event. And it just gave us the ability also just to train, to get to that next level, even through the challenges of, everything we had to go through over the last year and a half as a society.
I wanted to just echo that, just the process of having to do a survey for the label, that kickstarted something for us where we probably do 4 or 5 a year. Maybe it's too many, I don't know, I love them. I love the surveys. We want to add, it's a small team, so it wasn't really intuitive that you needed to survey. Like, oh, it's 20 people, we know how people feel. You know, you don't, not until you ask a survey.
Yeah.
And I also, someone mentioned the manual. Manual is a super helpful resource. I swear I reference the manual probably monthly for some, to remind myself of something. There's so much collected research and insights in there that anyone can download from the website, whether you're starting the process or not. It's really useful.
Good point. Like the manual, unlike some guides for certification systems, is really meant to be more of a resource. It has very little on how to get there, but there's a lot about the why and various resources to go and learn and inform, which is really what we're all trying to do here. And Nairi, I'm gonna bring your name up and your organization. I remember you speaking about how the label kind of helped justify some actions in the office, and even just that phrasing really stood out to me when we were originally speaking about just at Payette.
Yeah, and I was gonna add that for us, it really kind of opened the door and facilitated a lot of the conversations. You know, it is a big office, and we went through the process, and then we actually presented it to everybody. We went through our label, explained how JUST was measuring certain things, as well as the policies, the new ones we had created, and some of the existing ones that we updated or amended due to JUST. But it provided everybody kind of an even playing field and even vocabulary, and it helped facilitate further conversations. So after our presentation and getting the label, it actually spun off a series of different events, which I think just empowered people to ask the question. You know, you can look behind the curtain and nothing's going to happen. So we actually had like a lunch and learn just following after the JUST presentation about salaries, and it was just informative and people were able to ask questions, and it certainly helped demystify, I feel like, a lot of these categories that people feel are taboo. On top of that, it helped us understand a lot of what the intent of certain credits were. So even though they were a little bit hard to apply to the architecture field, specifically thinking of the supply chain one, we understood it as, well, how do we do that in terms of the start to end of the whole process? So we actually have a task force now that's looking at our consultants and how do we vet our consultants and who do they represent? So it was a good way to just, as someone else said, to kind of permeate the whole infrastructure and kind of the intent behind the manual, essentially.
I'm going to toss out one. There's an interesting question in the chat, which I'll toss out, but sort of maybe give it another one. The question in the chat is sort of, so how do some of the employees who weren't involved in the process feel about JUST as a thing and where it got to? And the sort of the question I had that sort of coupled with that was, so what was the most surprising thing that you learned out of the process? Not necessarily a particular, statistic, but maybe it is, or maybe it's something about the organization, and whoever wants to answer that, everybody probably has very different answers, and we probably shouldn't go through everybody, but any thoughts on those?
It's hard to answer the first one because we're all in the perspective of having been involved. But I can say one of the things, this isn't the first time today even that I've been up in front of a large group of people. Every part of what we had to do as we went to lockdown and COVID is, our inclusivity was questioned through that survey. And right out of the gate, we wanted to make sure we had a way and a method to have our entire office have the ability to be involved at least one day of the week for just a half an hour. And so we do this thing called coffee talk, and you know, we do survey. Our HR, she's here today too. She likes surveys. She loves doing surveys, and so she asks, like, you know, what is like one of the things that's been beneficial, you know, that we've done through, you know, the last year, because it's the only time frame we have since we've become just really. So it's a weird overlap, and one of it is this coffee talk. And it came out of just trying to be as transparent as possible throughout a very difficult time frame. You know, we didn't know if jobs were going to be able to continue, if we didn't know where things were going initially. And so it started there so people could focus on, you know, their work as opposed to their whether or not they have a job. And so it started as a real method to be as transparent as we possibly could throughout that time frame. So that's the closest I can get to saying like what other people felt, because you know, you have to do surveys, I guess, in order to find out, you know, these things. Sitting where I am, I can't quite. That's the only way I can answer.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that, because before this call, can you hear me okay? Oh.
Yeah.
For this call, I was thinking I missed an opportunity in our staff meeting on Monday. I shared just high level the results of our latest inclusion survey, because I'm doing a light update to our label. And I missed the opportunity to ask the team just that, you know, what do you think about just some of the questions that we, the topics that we kind of prepped for. I would have liked to have asked them, the rest of the team. But I will say that following our staff meeting on Monday, I had an employee who's newer to Dream reach out to me on the topic of pronouns, because we haven't quite gotten there yet with, you know, adding them to our signatures and things like that. And I would like to think that the fact that we talked about inclusion and about the label in our staff meeting played a role in that. So I'd say based on behaviors, I think the just label gives people a sense of trust and comfort and ability to speak up and ask questions like that.
So I'm going to give everyone, the two other panelists, an opportunity for any closing thought that you may have. The time with the panelists went so fast. I wish we could ask a lot more questions, but we are going to, after the final closing thoughts, head into a Q&A session where the folks who are on the screen now will be hosting a breakout room and be able to sort of dig into some more of these specifics. Any other closing thoughts? Nope. Larry, you good? All right. So with that, I will say, if you don't know where to start, I'm seeing some interesting chatter in the chat about transparency, and just even how, like, I can see that as being a hurdle, like the first hurdle to get through, to even like, okay, this sounds interesting, but we have to put all this information out publicly. So kind of, you know, maybe if there isn't an obvious starting point within your breakout room, that's a possible topic to discuss, is just kind of how did you get over the hurdle of taking all of this information that tends to be very close to us and very, very private, and putting it out there to the industry as a whole. So with that, Dan, if you don't mind sending us out to breakout rooms, we'll do those for about 10 minutes, 9 to 10 minutes.
Yep, that sounds great. So I'll be putting you all in breakout rooms now, and you should just see a link to join. And if you have any questions, please just put them in the chat. And as just a final reminder, as Rachel mentioned at the beginning, this presentation is recorded, but the breakout rooms will not be recorded. Okay.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Julie.
So I was in room 2 and in the middle of something, and then I just got kicked over to room 5. What's the word?
I'm sorry about that. I just messed up the order a little bit. Is it okay to move you? I apologize for cutting you off. I can put you back if it's better.
Yeah, I think I'd like to just go back and close that
Okay.
thought, and then I'll confirm with Diane that I'm good to go.
Okay, I
And come back
apologize
here.
for
No
that. You were in
worries.
room 2, right?
Yep, I was.
Okay, should be set.
Thanks. All right, Dan, I'm good to go.
I so apologize for that.
That's okay. That's okay.
Missing
Everybody
order.
understands. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, going now. Hi, are you just joining us today?
I had the time wrong in my calendar, so I apologize. I'm coming in late.
That's okay. I'm sorry. We are just in breakout rooms and we're coming back to the larger group in just a minute.
Okay, so I'll
and then
just stay put.
Sounds good. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
sorry about that.
No worries. Welcome back, everyone. We'll just wait a couple minutes for everyone to rejoin the main group.
That was a very short breakout.
It goes very fast, doesn't it?
It
Yeah,
was like speed dating.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just trying to do a like, what are the top 3 to 5 bullet points for everyone to write a short email to their office leadership to say this is why we should do this.
That's great.
Why don't you run down that for the whole crowd, Julie?
Oh boy,
Really nice closing to the topic, if you don't mind.
I will try. I think I was saying number 1, there's a benefit to supporting the ILFI as an organization and what they do. And it, I would assume, aligns to the core values and mission of all of our organizations. Number 2, it provides data that's actionable and aligned to many of the DEI conversations that have been happening in earnest over the past year, longer, but the past year in particular. I noted that it is not a significant lift overall, and it's not about having to meet a certain threshold, but instead it simply starts with the idea of transparency and just being able and willing to do the work and share the information. And there was one other thing I said for the folks in group 5. Can somebody spot me?
Compare yourself to peers.
Thank you. Yes. And one other valuable thing is to be able to compare yourself to your peer organizations from a staff recruitment, retention, et cetera, point of view, in addition to all of the equity and diversity conversations. It's also helped us, I would say, over the past year as people have been asking, as our clients, specifically in 90% of the RFPs that we've been seeing, ask about what our DEI initiatives are, to be able to say that we maintain the JUST label as a way of capturing information and assessing ourselves. That's gone a significant way for a global organization that's, you know, based in, like, started in the UK and has partners who are predominantly white, male, and British. So it's had some impact there.
Thank you so much, Julie, and thank you to all of our panelists and facilitators today for so generously sharing your experiences with the JUST label. It's really been great to hear about how it's impacted your businesses and your firm culture. Just to wrap up, we wanted to identify a few upcoming events, both within the BSA's EDI network, as well as with the Built Environment Plus. So we have an upcoming meeting for the On the Same Page EDI Network Book Club and Media Roundtable that will be occurring on May 28th. And there is an upcoming Boss Noma meeting next week as well, with the contact information below if you are interested in joining in. And I will also hand this over to Meredith Elbaum with Built Environment Plus, who will talk a little bit about some of their upcoming training programs.
Hi, glad to be part of this event today. Just want to let you guys all know that Built Environment Plus, one of the major things that we do is education. And we have some amazing opportunities available in across issues of sustainability and leadership particularly. And almost all of these courses can be free for companies with under 100 employees. So please reach out. If you're a company with under 100 employees, reach out to us. We have some anti-bias training, and we can also create some specific trainings for your organization. And these are the ones that we have coming up that are publicly available, but we can also do some for your companies privately. And we're also going to put in the chat the links along with some other upcoming events that we have soon in the near future. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Meredith. Thank you so much for being a co-sponsor of this event today. Really appreciate the collaboration. I also wanted to highlight our June EDI Network event, which will be on June 15th. We're really excited to be again partnering with this time another knowledge community. So together with the BSA SCUP College and University Roundtable, we will be discussing topics around EDI on campus. And we're really looking forward to that event. So with that, thank you all so much for attending. There's been some great discussion in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Have a good day, everyone.